I set up my expectations very high. I I heard a lot of good things about Germany and about Berlin before the trip, and I expected that the city is really nice, friendly, neat, clean, and nearly perfect. But when I got there, I was a little bit disappointed because my expectation to the city was really, really high. And I changed my expectations when I was there.
When I, kind of like you, I mean, I had medium to low expectations because just from stories that my mom had told me about having to pay extra money for ice and how she got in trouble for not composting, and my German teacher, Frau Higgins, was always saying that they don't shower regularly and all of these ideals, like there isn't air conditioning in the building, so I was expecting kind of like a hippie commune country that we were going into, so it was kind of a shocker in a good way, but at the same time, the research that I had done had led me to believe, oh, I should be excited for nightlife, going out and that kind of stuff, but I actually didn't do that.
Oh yeah, I didn't do that either, but the research that I had done pertained mostly to school studies, like 3 years studying in German, but I tried to put all of that out of my mind pretty much the second that I stepped on the airplane, because if you go in with all these expectations and like, I'm going to see this, I have to see this is what's going to be there, like, you know, you can be let down, so I tried to go in with little to no expectations. I mean, there was some things that I knew that I was going to see, but as far as like what I was like, this is going to be this is going to be happening in this part of the city, and you know, Berlin's going to be like this. Nah, I try not to think about it. I didn't want to be disappointed. I hate being disappointed.
There were two main ones that I wanted to see, and one of them was more generic in that I wanted to throw myself into the culture of Germany. I wanted to actually know and meet Berliners, and I wanted to see where they went and what they did on weekends and that kind of stuff. And it was a marketplace that I ended up going to because I had looked it up beforehand and figured out that on Sundays they went there. But it was 20 to 30 times more packed than any other part of Berlin I went on for the rest of the trip. There were so many people. They were literally, it looked like a convention, like friggin' Dragon Con here. Just swarms of people going down the street and packing onto the sidewalk, and people were carrying mannequins and stuff. And it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy because all these people were talking and laughing and smoking, and there were dogs going in and out of people's legs and stuff, and people riding on bikes would push their way through. But everyone's really nice, and nobody was getting mad at each other, and there was food being shared, and you could walk up and down and barter with people. It was really nice, and I felt like I did connect with the culture a little bit there. And then the other part that I wanted to go to was Teufelsberg. And Teufelsberg was going to be part of my paper because it is basically what it was an NSA station built on top of a mountain that was made out of rubble, that all the rubble in the wreckage, they covered a Nazi college, completely covered it, and then covered that in dirt and trees, and just hid everything that had happened there. There used to be a Nazi concentration camp, then a Nazi college in that one exact area, and then they turned it into just entertainment for people to enjoy. And not a lot of people know that, but you can still get up into the NSA station.
Like what you said, the marketplaces, I like to also enjoy the small and cultural thing of Germany. I like to go to the pubs, and I actually went to a lot of pubs. Before the trip, I thought I can research beer garden or beer pubs. So that's my research topic, so I want to experience more. But when I got there, my friends told me beer gardens, they're not open in the winter, springtime. They are popular in the summertime, so I cannot experience beer garden. And the pubs is not really like what I thought I wanted to research. So I can't do anything about that. But what we actually, the place we went, like Turkish Quarter and the neighborhoods we went to, really helped me a lot when I writing my papers.
Right. How about you?
Eat anything good at Turkish Quarter?
No, I just observed there are a lot of Turkish people there, and it's why there are a lot of Turkish people in Berlin. I started
That is
thinking.
actually a good question.
So,
Yeah.
so that helped me with my paper.
I asked because like every place that we went, I was like, what can I eat?
What's here for me to taste?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I had to do in Germany. Is like I really wanted to try like really good food.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was with David like every day, so we would have to stop for
McDonald's.
cheeseburgers. We would have to stop for cheeseburgers every time. But other than that, like it's like I really want to see like really good food, and I want to have good food because I'm a foodie, I guess. So I like food, and so that was one thing that I wanted to do. But the other thing I wanted to do was obviously look at really nice architecture. There was this one building in particular that I've studied in studio and other courses like cultures and stuff like that. It's called the Reichstag, and it's Norman Foster's addition to the dome of the old parliamentary building. And the way that building just like as corny as it sounds, like the building like calls to me.
Makes
Because
sense. It's in your interest field.
Yeah, but like the way that the secondary circulation of that building is just like ramping up all the way up to the culmination at the top of the dome. It's like the architecture is allowing Germany to be shown to you instead of the tour guide or whatever you're putting in your ear, the earbuds. It's like you can walk around and have a 360 view of the city, and it was very beautiful the way that was all set up. It was and conceived. It was ingenious, I think.
Did you learn from the textbook, like your architecture?
Actually, my professor told me about that one. He is like a textbook. He's better than the textbook that we had, actually.
No.
He is.
Nice.
Shout out to Kip Mooney. Okay, cut that out. We're talking about my paper now. All right. Well, my paper obviously had to do with architecture. Haley's probably had something to do with engineering. Ying's probably had something to do with people. Maybe diversity in people because she's from China coming over here and then going over to Germany and things like that. But the aspect of change in my paper was actually not an afterthought, but it certainly tied things together, though it wasn't in the forefront of my mind. I certainly knew that there were going to be innovations in Germany that I wasn't used to seeing in America. There's always going to be change places, but especially when you're changing environments, changing countries, changing ideals about how things are constructed, how things can be conceived even. And so I know that the change, that kind of shift, that modification of architecture and building methods and things like that was definitely going to be pretty apparent, and I had to pay attention to it. I did know that I was going to have to see some beautiful architecture, some really outstanding buildings that were just going to wow me. My major is architecture, so I'm always fascinated with buildings and new methods of construction and innovative techniques and designing buildings for people to inhabit, people to just walk by, people to really ponder on, just any kind of thing that has to deal with architecture. Being part of someone's life is very important to me. And so when I was there and thinking about my paper, I knew that there were certain things that I kind of had to see. I absolutely had to see the Reichstag, or the Dome of the Reichstag, which is Norman Foster's addition to the old parliamentary building. Just because I've studied it before in studio and architecture classes of mine, and it's always been a sight to see for me. Didn't know I was ever actually going to get to see it, but I was definitely excited about this, going to see that. I also really, really, really wanted to see an old Germanic castle, but there aren't too many of those in Berlin. going back to the architecture that I found really outstanding while I was there, the Reichstag specifically. That was the first building that I actually got to see. I led the tour around the building, to the building, about the building, and this is one of my favorite pieces that I actually saw there because of the way in which it pertains to Berlin, old Berlin, even though it's a new construction added in. I think Norman Foster was genius when he did this building. Even the secondary circulation of the ramp running all the way through up until the culmination at the top. It allows you to a complete 360-degree view of the city. And there's little tidbits on the way as you're listening to your headset, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to it. I was really soaking up the architecture of the building and the way that it was designed and letting the building actually tell you more about Berlin than the facts that someone was speaking into my ear. Another building that I was really wowed by was the dome, the roof of the Sony Center. We pass through this all the time, but I found myself looking up at it and always being astounded by it. It's just this really strange construction and not really, kind of like a sunshade, I suppose, but I definitely talked about that a lot in my paper, the way that these buildings can be kind of ambiguous and still have a very strict meaning and very strict purpose, but still be kind of puzzling to the eye even after 4 or 5 visits to the building. Another thing that was pretty puzzling was the Jewish Museum, and this is the atrium, which is my favorite. I was probably driving everyone crazy when I just wanted to stay there and soak up more of this building, but it was one of my absolute favorite pieces, mainly because of the way that it just denied all standards of architecture. The way that it was constructed, the way that it was conceived even. You could tell that from the outside of the building, but it's definitely up there with buildings that I thought were pushing the boundaries and denying textbook architecture, as I say a lot in my paper. But this building specifically, as well as the Reichstag and the Sony Center, they were all huge influences for me in my paper, and I think that they are sites to be seen if you ever do have to go back or get to go back to Germany.
When I know that my group project partner is my roommate, are my roommates, I didn't know what our project turn out going to be because Jamie is architecture student. Haley is doing something, maybe engineering and mechatronics, yes. And I like observing cultural details. I don't know what's the connection of the project. But when we actually doing this, I think there are a lot of connections in our projects, like the changes in different perspectives, the changes in architecture, the changes in engineering, and the population changes. It's all about the changes of the city. My paper was about the population changes in Berlin and my hometown Beijing. I didn't expect to research this topic before I go, but when I was in Berlin, I saw the city is pretty diverse. I saw a lot of things. There are different Asian shops and restaurants. We went to Turkish Quarter, where Turkish people are highly populated. I also saw people from Africa and Arab on the street. Berlin changes, and it was now the Berlin 10 or 20 years ago. And it becomes more international and open. My friend told me before my trip, he said you won't see a lot of Berliners in Berlin. And I'm thinking this sentence. I personally experienced the changes in my hometown. I can tell that 10 years ago, there are not a lot of people in Beijing, and most of them live there are local. But right now, we can see a lot of immigrants from other provinces
in China and international immigrants. Buses and trains and signs became bilingual, and you can hear different languages and different accent in Chinese when taking buses or trains. I was refused the changes in Beijing. I personally didn't like the changes in Beijing, and I miss the old and the quiet with not so many people. But when I was in Berlin, when I saw the construction of the city and the changes of the city, I feel the change is positive and promising. This trip helped me realize change is not only has bad side, and how I feel the changes in my hometown helped me perceive the population changes in Berlin, and how I view the changes in Berlin changed my mind of seeing things from different perspectives. And that's how I get the idea of my paper. I included in my paper, for example, why population migration starts in Berlin after World War II and how that affects Berlin's population. I also have statistics to show the change and the reasons for the population changes in Beijing. When we were in Berlin, we went to see neighborhoods, and it also reminds me of my hometown, especially the resident buildings. I took it at the neighborhoods near Jewish Museum, and I downloaded one picture from internet. This one is the resident buildings in Beijing, and you can see the similarities between these two. For the gallery pictures, the first one I want to show is the night view of Brandenburg Gate. Brandenburg Gate is a landmark of Berlin, and it looks magnificent at night with all those lights shining. This is Berlin's symbol and Germany's symbol. It is the size that I can only see at Berlin, so I want to include this in the gallery. I also want to show the Berlin Wall. I was impressed to see that there was still quite a lot left of the Berlin Wall. But you can see the wall is all damaged. I thought the wall will be repaired for visitors, but it's not. I think it's only the visitor that pay attention to the wall. And this wall has a lot of pictures and histories, and you can tell from the picture.
When we were introduced to this project, and I knew that my roommates were going to be my partners, and it was Ying and Jamie in my room, I knew that Jamie was doing her paper on architecture, and I wasn't entirely certain of what Ying was doing her paper on, but I had a feeling that it would correlate with Beijing in some way, and it would bring in her history and her culture because she's very in tone with that. And I knew that I wanted to do mine on sustainability and change in technology, so I figured that in some way each of us were going to bring in our own passion, and that on the trip was shown through change. And I knew that in some facet all of our papers were going to include this idea of just development and pursuing better standings and better structures, better energies, and more intact communities maybe. I'm not entirely certain of how that was going to work out, but working with them was a lot of fun because of that.
I tried to keep an open mind of what Germany must be like. I wasn't imagining everyone donning lederhosen and Tankards beer, but I had this idea before in New York, with people bustling from one place to the next, traffic everywhere, and tourist shops on every corner. Of that, I think that the tourist shop was the only correct guess. The other things I didn't get to see a lot. On the first day, I found that driving isn't uncommon, but people prefer to walk or ride bikes. Generally, the things that we interacted with the most, such as buses, trains, and escalators, came equipped with buttons or sensors that were installed to save energy. And there were several implementations of energy savings within buildings, such as recycled water in the bathrooms, seasonal heatings, and I found myself looking for these things day to day, such as this picture I have here where you had to install your card into a slot in your room to show the hotel that you were actually in that room, and it wouldn't turn on electricity otherwise. You couldn't turn on certain lights. They weren't attached to a main circuit that was constant, which actually saves a lot of energy. And then there was on buses and on trains as well, there were several sets of buttons which would open doors so that they didn't have to automatically open at every single stop and waste energy there. And then as well as that, this flap down here would automatically come out or let the conductor know that he needed to come and help and put it down for you. Along with this, I found that escalators had their own sensors where it would tell if a person was actually going to step on it, it would start to work rather than constantly running and draining electricity at a constant rate all day. By this point, on the third day, I knew that my paper would be dealing with the sustainability of Berlin. I found it really funny that the idea of waste became stereotyped with American. One of the only times that I saw the American flag was on the back of a Hummer limo, which is one of, we all know, the most wasteful designs of cars that we've ever seen. And this was pulling up to a Holocaust museum with a bunch of teenagers inside, and it was just the satire of the idea of America as gas guzzlers was incredible. One of the most memorable days for me was the trip to the Sanssouci Palace, because while the architecture was really nice, I noticed that this area contained portions that weren't being used, and I was disinterested in the design without use. So when I started seeing the peculiar wirings and lights, I got really curious about why they were there, and I noticed that they had meticulously wired in lights to the statues so that they looked normal, but in actuality they were redesigning this portion of the palace so that people could use it for something else, which turned out that it was a university. Along with that, my paper expanded on the idea of change. The focus is not on building an expectation, but reutilizing resources that are already there. This idea stemmed from Agenda 21, in which the United Nations gathered in the early 90s to discuss sustainability, and it was a voluntary treaty that Germany signed along with 100 other countries. They were already reusing materials and buildings that they could have easily ripped down. They began looking for everyday technologies to repurpose, either for society or personal use, such as entertainment derived from natural occurrences, which we then saw in Tempelhof as well, where people were gathering just for the plain fun of enjoying the nature. And I really wanted to talk about that in my paper.
When we were given the task of connecting 3 different papers with 3 different people, 3 different perspectives, 3 different time schedules, it was a little jarring at first, but we actually found that there's a very general theme running through all 3 of our papers, which is the aspect of change in whatever capacity it may be. Change in architecture, change in sustainability methods, and change in the population of Berlin. And once we actually found out that that was pretty much the highlight of all of our papers, it was actually pretty simple to go from there and build on it.
It was just a matter of finding out what our schedules were going to be like and trying to mesh them together and finding out how we wanted to do this project, this final explosion, so to say, that we had to wow people with.
More like explosion.
Yeah, well. Looking back at the class in itself, I would have to say that there have been some pretty fun times, and even past the trip, I think one of the most fun nights was just one of the first nights where we had to tell a story about ourselves, or we had to talk about a time when we were scared. Or do you remember that when the professors were just like, tell us a memory?
One of the first nights of the class, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Was that related to the I thing?
That was...
Kind of. No, it was kind of. If you look at it, the way that the I, me, my, the first night in the class when they were trying to say that we needed to open up and share a memory, kind of like we have opened up to share all of our perspectives throughout our papers and throughout the trip also. So when she says I, me, my for the writing portion, I immediately think of that first night when I told you guys about how I used to socialize with strangers and my mom would have to keep an eye out for me because she was taking me to pawn shops. Or how Jamie talked about her first concert that she went to on her own.
We have that, we have that past that we've tapped into, and so now we're more open to actually, obviously get to know each other, but we're more open to share our experiences and our perspectives as a byproduct of that, and that actually makes it easier for us to all interact and find commonalities in our papers, which are all,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know about you, but my paper was pretty special to me.
Well, I think the paper and the project helped me realize the perspective really matters. Like when people see things, your perspective comes in first, but you didn't realize that is your perspective influence what you saw, what you are thinking. So, like, I didn't know that my perspective was really important, but after this, and I think how I see what I see in Berlin and the whole class is my perspective. Is the most important thing is my perspective.
Yeah.
That's actually a really
That's
good point to
exactly
make, yeah.
pretty much the theme of the class is perspective.
Let's be professional about it, all right?
We're both super professionals.
Let's be professional.
Yeah.
Haley, get over here!
Okay, hang on. I got this. Wait. I want to join in on this. It looks like fun.
That is
You have to keep doing it.
exercise.
It's exercise.
Stop.
Aw, I didn't get to join in.
That's going in.
Talk about that. I'm sorry.
That's actually fine because I did a Justin Bieber hair flip. Is that recording?
That was creepy. No, that wasn't.
Thank God. All right. I always forget. It's just like, oh hell. Higgins. Shout out to Proud Higgins. What was my Proud's name? I didn't know.
Oh god.
No. Okay, yeah.
Alright.
Shout out to Proud Higgins.
Shut up.
I did. That was straight out of a horror movie. Straight out of a horror. You're hilarious.
I can't do it.
Why do I agree to edit this? This is not good. Alright. Okay. I think the second question was, what? Alright.
I'm sorry. I
I'm
saw
gonna go cry in the loneliest corner imaginable.
Oh, Jamie, no! You're my pretty princess.
I think I'm her pretty princess here.
Yeah, right now.
You can be my pretty princess too.
No, there's not enough room!
Where did you get that?
Where did I get it?
When?
Oh, I don't know. Let's put that back.
It's not a 5 seconds.
video's gonna be forever. Let's start and stop.
Truffle shuffle.
Twist.
Oh god. That's not the truffle shuffle, but you know, twist is okay too.
Damn right it's okay too. Love the 50s. Okay, so what am I talking about?
Lincoln? Moving over to the groupie thingy.
Did you push stop?
Oh, I forgot that. I'm sorry!
Alright.
This chair was not as comfy as I thought it was gonna
I
be.
don't know. You've sat on this one.
What?
Cool.
Yeah, it's recording. Wait, what was it? Yeah. I love you guys.
Alright. Keep that in.
No.
I would be a bass if I was a guy. What's the female equivalent of a bass?
Soprano?
Maybe? Tenor? Soprano?
Tenor saxes aren't low.
Alto?
That's not my job.
This is Jeopardy. You ever seen Jeopardy? You ever seen Jeopardy, the show?
What
No?
what Chinese show did you watch that
Wipeout.
you know the song to?
Wipeout. Okay, we're gonna put you on one of those singing shows, and they're gonna tell you to sing this song, and they're not gonna give you the audio track beforehand, so you're just gonna have to make it up. You're gonna listen to Lamb of God after this. Alright. They're good. They're good.
I like talking to you guys because I learn new things.
Oh!
Group hug. No, we're in a line. Okay, don't touch me.
Group hug!
You are scratching my back to pieces.
I know, so you just give in! Group hug! You guys are like two cats trying to force you together and you're just like...
Aw.
No, the perspective.
Perspectivo.
Ah, perspectivo! Ah, mi amore!
Hello. No.
No, you almost had it. No, don't laugh. What? Keep going.
Hello, Haley. Hello, Jamie.
What the hell are you doing?
You tell me. I know
I kind of speak Spanish. I try not to.
I just wanted to do that really fast. Hang on. You've been bobbing your leg this entire time.
I'm sorry, is it bothering you?
No. I just want to lift it up.
Well,
Drop. With the beat. Drop. Boom. Ah!
says Ryan.
Why does it say Ryan though?
Why don't say Jamie?
well, there's no Jamie. No Jamie with an I. I got it from Six Flags. It says Ryan because at the time, and still now, I'm obsessed with Ryan Ross. 2013? Since like 2005? Jesus.